So I read 44 books this year in 2022, and out of those 44 books, I rated 14 of them at least a 4 stars, if not a 5 stars. And today I want to take you through ranked 14 to number 1, my favorite books, all 4 or 5 stars from 2022. I think I had more 5-star reads this year than I have had in over a decade, so I had a really good reading year. I've got a lot of good books. Starting at number 14, we actually have a book that was at the end of a series that I finished this year, and that would be Akira Volume 6. I am a baby manga reader, like I only just started recently, but I'm loving what I've been reading so far. And Akira is at the top of the mountain for me. Akira is one of my favorite mangas I've ever read, and I'm so happy to have said it is a series I finished this year because it is such an amazing series. I recommend Akira a lot if you are any type of manga reader, or if you like sci-fi, or if you like post-apocalypse novels, or if you like action and adventure. It's got all of that in it, and this was number 6, which is the finale, so it's all done now, and I'm really sad about it, but I will reread them eventually, and hopefully I understand who's who a bit more on the second time round. But yes, I rated this a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed the finale here. I think it wrapped up things really well. Volume 1's a 5 out of 5. If we were doing a different year, Volume 1 would be like at the top of the list. We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and she is an author that I read nearly every single year at this point, and this is a reread for me, and I am counting some rereads, some not, but this is definitely what I'm counting because I actually rated this book a different rating than I did the first time I read it. The first time I read this book, I gave it a 3 out of 5. It is no secret that I don't really like nonfiction. It sort of bores me, but slowly and surely I'm coming around to nonfiction because I reread this book and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Look at me go. I like Adichie's work for the simplicity of it. It's very easy to read, and it gets my feminism reading in check every year, and you should too if you want to. Next is the other reread on the list. This is the only other reread, and it is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. It is a murder mystery, crime thriller, really good. I would say like the last 20% of this is the reason it doesn't get a 5. It really drops off, but the first like 80% of this book is perfection, and I'm so glad I gave it a reread. I read it during winter because it is the quintessential winter read for me. It is so cozy, it is so warm, and it is very, very engrossing. I love this. Like one of my favorite thrillers that I've ever read, so yeah. Number 11. Oh my gosh, here we go. This is where it gets good. We have Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chiang, and this book is... Now I'm going to start smiling when every book pops up because it's getting really good. But yeah, another 4 out of 5 here. This is a comic series. Brian K. Vaughan also wrote Saga, which is another comic series that's recently come out, and I love Saga. Saga is also one of my favorite things I've ever read. And then I went and read Paper Girls because an Amazon, like the Prime Amazon TV show for this came out. It was like just one season, then it was canned, unfortunately. Goodbye with Paper Girls. But we still have the complete story here in paper form with the comic, and it's absolutely marvelous. It's got a lot of time travel, and it follows 4 young teen girls that get like caught up in this whole time travel scheme. It's really fun. The girls are what make this book for me, though. They're beautiful. These 4 girls are very beautiful. So yeah. And the TV shows are magnificent in my opinion. The TV show is very low budget, but good. Next, at number 10, is a poetry collection that I recently read in my 24-hour readathon, and that is Living on Stolen Land by Amberlynn Quay Molina. And I'm not a poetry fan. I always will say that on every single video that I mention poetry. I'll be like, I'm not a fan. I don't like poetry. But when I do come across a poetry collection that I can read, and not just read and get through, but love, I think that's quite special. So this book, whew, let's go. Most of this poetry is about colonialism here in Australia, and Amberlynn is an Indigenous Australian author. Very important for me to read it as a white person in Australia, which is why I did pick it up, and I learned so much from reading this book. The reason I love this book so much is because of the way Amberlynn writes. It's like very straightforward and understandable for me. Like a lot of poetry I find a bit too much for me to handle. Like I can't understand what they're talking about, but with Amberlynn, it's like the 2 pieces of the puzzle, my brain and the way she writes, just fit together so perfectly. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book and I recommend it. At number 9, we have our first classic, and it is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Frank Baum. L. Frank Baum. Nearly got it. I missed the L. This is in the Cute Pink Penguin edition, which I love, and it's got a big tea stain on it. So this book is, not in the best condition, but I love it. This is a children's classic, I would say. It is I think it's the only children's classic on this list, so yeah, my favorite children's book that I read this year. I do read a little bit of children's in middle grade every year, just because I do just enjoy all the magical and whimsical worlds that I lived in as a child, because I read a lot as a kid, and I love just taking myself back. So this book was for that reason. I'd never read it before, actually. I'd watched the movie a lot as a kid, but the book was a pleasant surprise. I really liked the added elements to this book that weren't in the movie, because there were quite a few scenes that were cut, and overall I just love the Tin Man. The Tin Man has my heart. Weird, because he doesn't have a heart. At number 8, we have the other poetry collection on this list. This is one of my favorite poetry collections I've ever read, and it is Margaret Atwood's Dearly. I dog-did this book so much. I need to go properly in and tab it all, because I just didn't expect myself to tab it so much that I didn't really have my tab set up when I picked up the book, and I just remember reading it so quickly all in one sitting, I think, and so I just ended up dog-earing it because I didn't have my tabs on me. That's how much I didn't expect this book to blow me away, because poetry, right? I'm not gonna like poetry. The only reason I have this book is because it's Margaret Atwood, and I love Margaret Atwood. I've read The Handmaid's Tale and I've read The Testaments, and I just hit myself in the chin again. And I love those two books. They're 4 and 5 out of 5 stars respectively, and this book is a 4 out of 5, and it proves to me that Margaret Atwood is my type of writer, because if she can write poetry that I love, I'm gonna love anything she puts out. So I have other books on my shelf to read from her next. I'm really excited to do that next year. I loved this poetry, especially for the themes. A lot of this poetry is about absence, and it's about mourning people that are now not in your life anymore, and it's also about aging. I found those parts of this poetry extremely interesting, as they're not really things I can relate to much at this point in my life, but I felt like Margaret's words really touched me in a way, and it's whoa, if it's touching me now, when I didn't even really relate, imagine when I do relate later in my life. I'll be coming back to this book as a Bible. And it was one of my favorite books I read this year for sure, and I really recommend it if you are a Margaret Atwood fan or a poetry fan. At number 7, we have my favorite author at the moment, one of my favorite authors at the moment, and Sayaka Murata with Earthlings. And this came out a few years ago now, because she did have a newer short story collection come out this year, which I haven't read yet, which is called Life Ceremony. But this year I ended up reading Earthlings instead, which came out a couple years ago now. This book is absolutely bonkers. It's insane. It made my eyes pop out pretty much, and I just did not expect where we start the book to where we end up. I'm just how did we even get here? It's insane. So if you like books that are wacky or weird or going to make your eyebrows go up a little bit, you should read this book. I was one of those kids that would always go and find the books that used to be banned. I would Google banned books and go and read those books. So I was A Clockwork Orange, Cuckoo's Nest type of girl, Animal Farm, 1984. But you don't really find that books get banned as much now. If stuff's weird and wacky and extremely out there, it still sells pretty well, and Earthlings is an example of that. So if you're into any type of books that used to be banned, or you're into controversial books, I definitely recommend this book. If you want to read something interesting, this will interest you. But also, if you're not into that, don't read it. Do not read this book unless you want to be weirded out. At number 6, we have the book of the year, in the sense of this took me 6 months to read. It definitely consumed most of my 2022, and that is Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. This book is so incredible. We're getting into the really good stuff here with the top 6. These books are all just so amazing. But this is a 4 out of 5 stars, simply because of the fact that it's my reading preference. I am not used to long classics yet. This book is 600 pages and it's dense, and I want to get more into classics. That's why I read this book. I was recommended Dostoevsky a lot. A lot of people love him, and I think I love him too, actually. But it's just early days for me in terms of long classics. I struggled for the first half of this book, to be completely honest with you. So it took me 6 months to read this book, but eventually, once I got through to the end, I just sped through it. It was so amazing. The second half of this book is so incredibly deep and touching. This book was really, really good. So yeah, I highly recommend this book if you are someone that can read long classics. That's the catch though. If you like long classics, you should read this book, but this is definitely not for everybody, because not everybody likes classics. Not everybody loves long classics, especially. I can hardly get through long classics at this point, and I call myself a classics reader, so it's a tough one. But yeah, overall, Raskolnikov is amazing. He was like one of my favorite characters that I read from the perspective of this year. I would say he's like my favorite protagonist, I think. I'm looking at all the other protagonists. Oh no, the next one has my favorite protagonist. Raskolnikov was my second favorite protagonist of the year. He's like a male version of me that's insane and a little murderous. The axe should give it away. And I can't wait to read more Dostoevsky. He is going to become one of my favorite authors, I feel like. I've got another book of his on my shelf already and I want to pick up more next year. I should become a Dostoevsky reader before I know it. Dostoevsky's writing, whew, it's so different. It's so cool. I love it. At number 5, the first 4.5 out of 5 stars. All the books before this were 4 out of 5. And this is Berserk by Kentaro Miura. And this book contains my favorite protagonist of the year, who is Guts. He is amazing. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, Guts. You are incredible. Anyone that is interested in manga, this is one of my favorite mangas I've ever read, and I've only read volume 1 of the deluxe version, so don't give me any spoilers. Just had a blast reading this book. It's packed with action, packed with characters, with substance, and tear-jerking moments, and shocking moments, and yeah, this whole book is just so good. Can't say anything more about this book. I made a whole entire video about why it's so great, so you can just check that out if you want. But the art style as well. The art style is incredible. The top 4 books are the 4 books that I rated a 5 out of 5 this year. The first book is Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman. It really suited where I was at in my life. I got so much out of this book by reading it. This book wasn't so much a book that like said all the right things or told me things that I thought was so profound and deep that I was like blown away. It was more just, it showed a perspective that I've never really read from before. And it's a bit of a perspective that could be like, not controversial, I want to say, but it's definitely not the most like enjoyable story or perspective to read from. You're essentially reading from the perspective of a woman who's cheating for like 2/3 of the book and sort of just whinging and whining about everything and like how everything sucks, and it's sort of like annoying, but sometimes like that's how life is. I haven't been cheating, by the way. I don't want to say that sounds like I've been cheating. I have not been cheating this year. It's more the character's perspective that is so cynical and so dreary and so over it that I really related to. I was like, yeah, sometimes life is just like annoying. I get it. Like I can't be stuffed like trying to be the perfect person, and I liked that about this book. I liked how it was very unapologetically like annoying. I don't know how else to put it. And at the end of the book, I actually feel like I got something out of it. This very relatable reading experience I had is the reason that I read. It's how I want to be as a reader. I want to eventually be able to pick up a book and be like, this is what I need to read right now. And I can just tell from reading the blurb, feeling the book, just looking at the front cover. And that's what I was able to do with this book, because I picked it up on a whim and I read it and I was like, wow, this is what I need to read right now. I just felt like this book represented me becoming a better reader and knowing myself more. So I really enjoyed this and I gave it a 5 out of 5. Now we have my top 3 favorite books of this year, which were all 5 out of 5s, like I said. And these are books I would recommend. I wouldn't so much recommend Acts of Service. I feel like that was a very specific book for me. But these next 3 books were just incredible. And I think they're just the best. So at number 3, we have an Australian, I think Melbourne-based author, which is where I live, which is sort of cool. And this is one of the earliest books I read this year. So it's been with me the whole entire year and it's become like a best friend. And that book is Sunbathing by Isabel Beach. And this is about a woman who's grieving her father. And she's currently on a trip in Italy while she's doing that. And you're sort of jumping back and forth between like this extreme melancholy and grief she feels over her father versus this beautiful landscape in which she's living. I love this contrast that's created in this book. I feel like this book is so dynamic and has so many different layers to it if you really read into it, which me and my sister both did. My sister currently has Acts of Service on her, so I do have a very tabbed up version of Acts of Service as well. But she has it, so I can't show you. But yeah, me and my sister also both read Sunbathing, the same copy, and tabbed it together, so that's very cute. She also gave it a 5 out of 5, I believe. Once again, I can't relate to grief yet in my life. I'm very blessed that I haven't lost anyone extremely close to me, like Isabel actually has herself, I think. I think she herself has lost her father, and I can't wait to once again just have this on my shelf, and I want books to like create stories for me to reflect parts of my life, and I feel like this book eventually is going to do that. And it's only the start with me in this book, really. At number 2, we have my favorite author of all time, and that is Murakami, and we have Hardboiled Wonderland and The End of the World. I also read A Wild Sheep Chase this year, and I didn't like that one as much. I thought it was alright, and then I read this book because a lot of people said it's got like that more like fantastical, magical element to it, which is something I really enjoy about Murakami, and so I went and read this book, and oh my god, it did not disappoint, and is now my favorite book by my favorite author. And you're jumping between these two timelines. One is in like this fantasy-esque town, and then the other one is in like grimy Tokyo, like in current time. And I loved jumping between these two timelines and trying to figure out like the clues of like how do they relate to each other, because it isn't clear at first why these two timelines would be in the same book. And overall, I just think Murakami so brilliantly crafted a book that just unravels so naturally, and all the clues actually add up to an answer at the end, which I really liked. And there is still a little bit of questioning at the end, like any Murakami book, of being like, what happened exactly, and trying to put the pieces together, but not so much with this book. I feel like a lot of questions are answered, but enough questions were also left open. He hit the perfect mix, essentially, with this book. So yeah, and I love Murakami for his writing style. So that goes without saying. His writing style is absolute perfection. It is so clean, so simple, but also so descriptive. There's something about it that just creates such a strong ambience, and it reminds me a lot of actually being in Japan, which is one of my favorite places to visit. I love Murakami. I loved this book so much. And at number 1 for this year, we have a little bit of a controversial pick. I would say it is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. My sister hates this book. But I love it, and I'll tell you why. When I read this book, I tapped the hell out of it. I've never had such a profound experience of a non-fiction book in my entire life. I feel like I learned so much from reading it. And I think because it is a non-fiction, which is usually a type of book I wouldn't really like, and I had such a great experience with it, is why it's at the number 1 spot. It just completely opened up my mind to why non-fiction is worth reading, and I think this book has changed my reading habits for the rest of my life. And I'm also planning now to sidetrack into psychology on a career path, so this book really changed my life a lot. And that's what books should do. I feel like books should change your mind and change your life. That is why I read, and that is what this book did for me. I would recommend this book to anyone who enjoys nonfiction. I don't particularly usually, so I'd also recommend this book to somebody that's interested in psychology, which is me. I learnt a hell of a lot from reading this book, and yeah, I could understand the problem of sometimes Bessel is a little too descriptive with certain traumatic events. I don't think it's needed, and I totally get that critique. I feel like sometimes he's slightly sexist as well, and I get that, but you know, Murakami is very sexist all the time. So that's not going to stop me from giving a book 5 stars. But overall, I think once again, I just read this book at the right time in my life for it to influence me profoundly. I just love tabbing books, and I realized nonfiction, if I am reading from a topic that I enjoy, is the best way to tab. Bessel writes in a way that's really easy to digest. Even when he's explaining like clinical complex topics, I was able to get a good grasp of what he was talking about, and I appreciate that a lot about this book. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed this book so much, and I recommend it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Those are my top 14 books of this year. Every book that I gave a 4 to a 5 out of 5 stars. I am extremely excited for another year of reading, and I hope your 2023 starts off well. And I'll see you soon. Let me know what was your favorite book of 2022. Bye-bye.